I didn't tell anyone I was taking the old service road through the mountains. It was supposed to shave an hour off the drive, but somewhere past the last gas station, my phone lost signal, and the trees pressed in so tightly that the sky disappeared. I'd grown up hearing stories about the Appalachian backroads, how they twist on purpose, how the woods remember, but I'd always laughed them off. That night, with my headlights cutting a narrow tunnel through the fog, the laughter felt very far away. The road narrowed until it was little more than gravel. Branches scraped the sides of my car like fingernails, and the radio hissed with static no matter which station I tried. I told myself it was nothing. Old roads do this. Mountains mess with signals. Fear comes easy when you're alone. That's when I saw the light. It wasn't a house. There were no driveways, no mailboxes, no signs of life, just a single yellow glow deep in the trees, flickering as if someone were carrying a lantern. I slowed without realizing it, my foot easing off the gas. As I passed, the light moved. It kept pace with my car, drifting between the trunks, always just far enough away that I couldn't make out its source. I tried to laugh again, but the sound caught in my throat. The forest was silent in a way that felt wrong, like everything was holding its breath. I sped up. The light vanished. A mile later, the road ended. Not gradually, just ended. Gravel gave way to dirt, then nothing at all. I slammed the brakes, my car skidding sideways before stopping inches from a drop-off I couldn't see the bottom of. My heart hammered, so hard I felt dizzy. I put the car in reverse. Nothing happened. I tried again. The engine revved, but the car didn't move. When I stepped out to check the tires, the air hit me like cold water. The fog was thicker now, swallowing the headlights until the road behind me dissolved into gray. That's when I heard the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, crunching on gravel somewhere beyond the reach of the lights. "Hello!" My voice sounded small, swallowed by the trees. The footsteps stopped. I waited, counting my breaths. 1, 2, 3. Something exhaled. It was close enough that I felt it on the back of my neck, a warm, damp breath that didn't belong in the cold air. I spun around, flashlight shaking in my hand, but the beam caught nothing but trunks and fog. Then I noticed the smell. Wet earth, rotting leaves, and something underneath it all, old metallic like rust and rain. I got back in the car and locked the doors. My hands were slick with sweat as I tried the ignition again. The engine turned over, coughing once before dying completely. The headlights flickered and went out, plunging everything into darkness. The footsteps started again. This time there were more of them. They circled the car slowly, crunching gravel, snapping twigs. I pressed myself against the seat, staring into the black beyond the windows. Shapes moved in the fog, tall, thin silhouettes that bent the wrong way when they walked. One of them stepped into the faint glow of my dashboard. It looked like a man from a distance. Closer up, it was wrong. Too long in the arms. Its head tilted at an angle no neck should allow. Where its face should have been, there was only shadow, except for two pale reflections that caught the light when it leaned closer. It tapped the glass. Once, twice. I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them again, the figure was gone. The fog pressed against the windows now, thick and swirling, as if the forest itself were breathing. A voice came from behind me. "Don't open the door." I screamed, spinning around, but the back seat was empty. The voice came again, clearer this time, low and urgent. "They wait for that." "Who are you?" I whispered. Someone who didn't listen. The fog outside thinned just enough for me to see them all at once. Dozens of shapes stood between the trees, perfectly still, watching. Their eyes, if that's what they were, glimmered faintly, reflecting nothing I could see. The voice in the back seat spoke again. "When the road ends, you keep going. You don't stop. You don't look. But the car, it'll start," the voice said. "It always does, just not when you're afraid." The tapping came again, harder this time, rattling the glass. A pale hand pressed against the driver's side window, fingers too many and too long, leaving a smear that steamed in the cold air. I turned the key. Nothing. The hand slid down the glass slowly, deliberately. Another appeared on the windshield, then another. The fog pressed closer, and the shapes began to move, stepping toward the car in unison. I tried the ignition one last time. The engine roared to life. The hands vanished instantly, melting back into the fog. I didn't wait to turn on the headlights. I slammed the car into gear and floored it, the tires spinning before catching. The road reappeared beneath me. I didn't look back. I didn't slow down. The trees blurred past, and the fog thinned until the stars broke through overhead. When I finally hit pavement again, my phone buzzed with a dozen missed notifications, the signal snapping back like nothing had ever been wrong. I drove until dawn. When I checked the car in daylight, there was no sign of damage. No handprints, no scratches, just dried mud along the tires and a smell I couldn't get rid of, no matter how long I aired it out. I told myself it was stress, fatigue, my imagination filling in gaps. But sometimes late at night, when the rain hits just right, my radio fills with static again. And beneath it, I swear I can hear footsteps on gravel, slow, patient, waiting for me to stop. I didn't believe in bad roads until the night I drove through that one. The locals didn't warn me directly. They never do. They just went quiet when I mentioned it, like saying the name out loud would make it notice you. It happened in late October, just after sunset, when the mountains start swallowing light faster than they should. I was driving alone, returning from a job site survey in a rural hill region, far from any main highway. My GPS showed a shortcut, an old mountain road cutting through forest instead of looping around it. I hesitated for maybe 3 seconds before turning onto it. That was my mistake. The road narrowed almost immediately. Asphalt gave way to cracked pavement, then patches of gravel. Tall pine trees pressed in from both sides, their branches overlapping above me like ribs. No houses, no lights, just my headlights carving a thin tunnel through darkness. I told myself it was fine. I had fuel. I had signal. People used this road. Probably. About 10 minutes in, my phone lost service. Not dropped, just gone. No bars. No emergency call option. I remember checking the time, 9:17 p.m., and feeling a small, irrational irritation, like the world had inconvenienced me on purpose. The radio crackled next. At first I thought it was static from the terrain, but the sound wasn't random. It rose and fell like breathing through fabric. I turned the knob. AM, FM. Every station carried the same low hiss, broken occasionally by a dull knocking sound. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats again. I shut it off. The silence afterward was worse. My tires sounded too loud on the gravel, each crunch echoing back at me. The forest felt attentive, not alive exactly, but aware. I kept glancing at the tree-line, half expecting movement. Every shadow looked deeper than it should have been. Then I saw the first reflector. A small yellow road reflector stood on the right side, bent slightly inward like it had been pushed. That wasn't strange. What was strange was the second one on the left, then another on the right. They alternated, zigzagging ahead of me instead of marking a straight edge. I slowed down. My headlights followed the pattern until the road curved sharply and dipped downhill. At the bottom of the dip, my lights caught something pale near the trees. A person. I hit the brakes. They stood just off the road, partially hidden behind a trunk. Tall, too still. I rolled my window down an inch and called out, asking if they needed help. My voice sounded weak, swallowed by the forest. No response. I watched for movement. Nothing. Just a shape that might have been a person, or might have been a trick of light and bark in distance. After a long moment, I drove forward. As my car passed the spot, my headlights swept over empty trees. No person, no footprints, nothing disturbed the ground. I didn't stop. The road continued downward, then leveled out into a narrow valley. Fog began to creep in, low and uneven, like something spilling across the ground. It clung to my tires and rose in soft waves behind the car. That's when I heard footsteps. Not outside, inside the car. A soft, rhythmic sound, like someone shifting weight on fabric. I froze, hands clenched around the steering wheel, heart hammering. The sound came again, from behind me. I told myself it was the suspension, or the loose equipment in the back seat. I did not look in the rearview mirror. The road ahead straightened, and that's when my headlights caught the barricade. 2 wooden planks nailed together, painted white long ago, now chipped and flaking. No warning signs, no cones, just blocking the road entirely. I stopped inches away from it. The engine idled too loud. The fog thickened, pressing close to the windows. I considered backing up, but when I checked my mirrors, the road behind me was gone. Not hidden by fog, gone. Just darkness where the road should have been. I sat there, breathing shallow, listening. That's when the knocking started again. 3 slow taps. Not on the wood barricade. On my trunk. I didn't move. Another 3 taps. Closer this time. Louder. Then dragging. Something slid along the side of my car, nails or knuckles scraping metal with deliberate slowness. I squeezed my eyes shut, every instinct screaming to run, but there was nowhere to go. A shape passed in front of my headlights. Not fully solid, not fully shadow. It moved wrong, too smooth, too quiet, like it wasn't bound by joints. It paused directly in front of the car, blocking my view of the barricade. I could feel it looking at me. Not with eyes, just attention, heavy and focused. Then it leaned closer, and my headlights dimmed. Not shut off, dimmed, like the light itself was being absorbed. The pressure in the car changed. My ears popped. The air felt thick, hard to breathe. I tasted something metallic. And then, just as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. The headlights flared back to full brightness. The road was clear. No barricade, no fog, no shape. Just empty pavement stretching forward. I didn't think. I floored it. The road climbed sharply and spat me out onto a paved highway I recognized. Streetlights, reflective signs, civilization. I didn't slow down until I reached a gas station 20 miles later. Inside, under fluorescent lights, I tried to calm my shaking hands. I told the clerk where I'd come from, mentioned the mountain road. His expression changed. He asked me what time it was when I went through. I told him. He nodded slowly and said nothing else. When I went back outside, I noticed deep scratches running along the side of my car, from the trunk to the driver's door. Parallel, evenly spaced. I still drive for work, still take long trips, but I don't trust shortcuts anymore. And every now and then, when the radio crackles just a little too long between stations, I hear it again. No one told me the village was abandoned when I first saw it. That should have been my warning. The way it appeared suddenly, as if it hadn't been there a moment before, waiting quietly for someone to notice it again. I was traveling through a remote rural region for work, documenting old settlement patterns for a small research project. It was late winter, the kind where daylight fades early and the air feels hollow. Locals had mentioned a cluster of houses a few kilometers off the main road, marked on older maps but missing from newer ones. They didn't say much else. When I pressed for details, conversations ended quickly, politely, like I'd crossed an invisible line. I reached the dirt path just before dusk. The road narrowed until trees brushed both sides of my car, their branches scraping the windows with a dry, whispering sound. The GPS stopped updating, frozen on a pale blue that no longer moved. I parked at the edge of what looked like a small square and stepped out, the silence pressing down immediately. The village was intact. That's what unsettled me most. Houses stood upright, roofs sagging but uncollapsed. Doors hung open or slightly ajar. Windows were intact, though dark, reflecting nothing. A well sat at the center, its wooden cover tilted but not broken. No signs of fire, no obvious destruction. Just emptiness, like everyone had stepped away at the same time and never come back. I called out. My voice didn't echo. It just stopped. I told myself this was normal. Places get abandoned for reasons that don't leave marks. Economics, relocation, slow decline. Still, I kept noticing details that didn't fit. A pair of sandals neatly placed outside one doorway. A rusted bicycle leaning carefully against a wall, not fallen. Clay pots arranged along a windowsill, undisturbed by time or animals. It felt paused. I took photos, wrote notes, forced myself to focus on the work. The light faded quickly, turning the village gray and flat. Shadows pooled in corners, stretching longer than they should have. Every sound I made, footsteps, the click of my camera, felt too loud, like I was disturbing something that had been asleep. Then I heard it. A single footstep. Not mine. It came from behind one of the houses, slow and deliberate. I froze, listening. There was no follow-up sound. No scuffle. No voice. Just that one step, placed carefully on dirt. I waited. Nothing. I convinced myself it was an animal. A goat, maybe. Or the wind shifting debris. Still, I didn't move for a long time. When I finally did, I realized my hands were shaking. I decided to leave after one last look inside a nearby house. The door creaked softly as I pushed it open. Inside, the air was stale but not rotten. Dust lay thick, but footprints were visible beneath it, old ones overlapping, as if many people had passed through before everything stopped. A wooden table stood in the center with 3 cups arranged around it. No cracks, no cobwebs inside them. I touched one. It was warmer than the air around it. I pulled my hand back immediately, heart racing. There was no logical explanation for that. The house had no electricity, no sunlight inside. Yet the warmth lingered in my palm like I'd touched something recently held. That's when the whispering started. It wasn't language, not words, just breathy sounds, low and close, like someone murmuring to themselves in the next room. I turned slowly, scanning the dark corners. The sound didn't come from one place. It moved, circling the room, never quite settling. I backed toward the door. The whispering stopped. Silence rushed in, heavier than before. Outside, the village felt different. Closer. The houses seemed nearer together, the paths narrower. I could swear there were more structures than before, filling spaces I didn't remember seeing. I checked my watch. Only 20 minutes had passed. I headed toward my car. Halfway across the square, I heard the well. The wooden cover creaked, slow and uneven, like it was being lifted and set back down. I stopped, staring at it from a distance. The sound repeated, creak, thud, creak, thud. I told myself not to go closer. I went closer anyway. As I approached, the sound stopped. The well sat still, innocent, its dark opening just visible beneath the crooked cover. I leaned slightly, shining my flashlight inside. The beam didn't reach the bottom, but I heard breathing. Deep, calm, patient. It felt like the sound rose to meet me, filling the space between us. I stepped back quickly, bumping into something solid. I turned. A figure stood inches behind me. Not fully clear, like it was half-formed from shadow and dust. I could make out the shape of shoulders, a head, but no distinct face. It didn't move, didn't threaten. It just stood there, occupying space, as if it had always been there and I was the one intruding. I couldn't breathe. Then very slowly it raised an arm and pointed, not at me but toward the houses behind it, and I understood without being told. This village wasn't empty. It was occupied by absence, by whatever remains when people leave something behind without closure. The sounds, the warmth, the breathing. It wasn't trying to hurt me. It was reminding me I didn't belong. The figure stepped back, or maybe the darkness moved forward. I'm not sure. Suddenly, the square was empty again. The well was silent. The houses stood still. No whispers, no footsteps. I didn't wait to question it. I ran to my car, hands fumbling with the keys, heart pounding so hard it hurt. The engine started on the first try, a sound that felt impossibly loud. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The village was still there, but every doorway was now closed, perfectly shut. Sometimes late at night, I hear breathing when my house is completely silent. Calm, patient, like something that knows where I've been, and knows I noticed it back.